Today on Blitzer Reports, America strikes back.
It's going to be tough, dirty, hard work.
The Pentagon says the search for Osama bin Laden will go step by step, cave by cave. And if he's gotten away, a warning.
I think any country in the world that would knowingly harbor bin Laden would be out of their minds.
Has the search for the Taliban's Mullah Omar been put on hold? And where are terrorist sleeper cells likely to pop up next? The answer may come from al-Qaeda prisoners as America strikes back. Hello, I'm Wolf Blitzer in Washington. What would make a battle-hardened al-Qaeda fighter offer information to his captors? Just a moment, the FBI's efforts to put the squeeze on Osama bin Laden's followers. But first, the latest developments. A warning today from Defense Secretary Donald Rumsfeld. At a NATO meeting in Brussels, Rumsfeld said that September 11th could be but a dim preview of terror attacks to come. Although fighting is dying down in Afghanistan, Rumsfeld said the mission there is far from over. Afghan militias are pulling heavy equipment out of Tora Bora. It's another indication the fighting there is finished after al-Qaeda's apparent retreat. U.S. forces are said to be searching caves in the region. With still no sign of Osama bin Laden, several officials suggested today he may be dead. More than a dozen enemy prisoners arrived today at the U.S. encampment in Kandahar. Also arriving in Kandahar, a team of FBI interrogators. One told reporters their primary mission is to gather information that could prevent terror attacks in the future. And thousands of Capitol Hill staffers and police officers and postal workers will have the option of receiving the vaccine for anthrax or continuing a course of antibiotics. The people affected include those who were closest to the anthrax-tainted letter that was opened in the office of the Senate Majority Leader Tom Daschle. All have received antibiotics. The vaccine is precautionary. We'll have much more on this coming up. In the Tora Bora Mountains, the weather has turned cold, and so has the trail of Osama bin Laden. Assuming bin Laden was in Tora Bora, he has escaped, he is dead, or he's still in the area hiding out. U.S. commandos still are in the region. So is CNN's Nick Robertson.
We spoke with some prisoners today, come down off the mountains a couple of days ago. They told us that Osama bin Laden was very mobile, that even some of the people they were with wouldn't recognize him, and they say they don't know where he is. They think that he could have fled to Pakistan, south through the mountains. That is certainly the view of the Eastern Alliance military commanders here, that the al-Qaeda forces have been pushed back by the bombing in the air and by their forces on the ground, pushed back southwards, and they believe that has driven Osama bin Laden back into Pakistan. However, the mountains are extensive here. It is possible that somewhere in these mountains, and they are densely forested in places, Osama bin Laden could still be holding out, and he could have doubled back essentially and come back into Afghanistan. So nobody really knows, and nobody has even any current evidence that they're sharing with us, at least, that they may know where he is. And the radio transmissions that were quite intensive during the bombing, when the bombing was going on, have essentially dried up, and there's very little with that regard that commanders here can point to say, yes, this is a clue, Osama bin Laden is still there. Very little information to go on.
That was Nick Robertson reporting from Tora Bora. And as far as the most wanted go, after Osama bin Laden, the Taliban leader Mullah Muhammad Omar may be number 2. And Afghan officials are beginning to say they believe they know where to find him. But as CNN's Amanda Kibble reports, they also seem to be taking a pass on trying to hunt him down.
In an interview with CNN Tuesday, Kandahar's new intelligence chief, Haji Gulalai, says his people know where former Taliban leader Mullah Muhammad Omar is. Just 8 hours away from here, south of Kandahar, in Helmand province, in the district of Baghran. Now, Baghran is a mountainous, cave-filled area, and once it was an al-Qaeda stronghold. Gulalai says this is a perfect place for Mullah Muhammad Omar to hide. But Gulalai says his administration's priority right now is not to launch a major manhunt for Mullah Muhammad Omar. He says the administration has neither the time, the money, nor the resources to go after Mullah Omar. However, he stresses that Mullah Omar is by no means off the intelligence radar screen. His people continue to monitor his movements, they know where he is, and this intelligence is being shared with U.S. Special Forces here on the ground. Their operations, says Gulalai, remain completely separate. His forces have not been asked to cooperate as yet with the U.S. search for Mullah Omar, but he says should his forces be called on to assist on the ground, they would be ready to do so.
That was Amanda Kibble reporting from Kandahar. Meanwhile, 8 federal agents have been dispatched to Afghanistan to interrogate enemy prisoners. More than a dozen prisoners arrived today at the U.S. compound at the Kandahar airport. The compound's newly constructed prison is made of corrugated steel and designed to hold up to 120 people. The head of the FBI's interrogators spoke today with reporters.
Our primary goal is to see if we can gather information to try to prevent future attacks against Americans, and then obviously a secondary role is to try to garnish any information, evidence concerning the past attacks against us.
If there's scores of Al-Qaeda fighters here, that's a pretty potentially rich source of information, isn't it?
Possibly, it could be if they're willing to talk to us. You know, there's they can be a hard group, and sometimes it's very difficult to get them to talk to you.
Joining me now to talk about the effort to learn something from those prisoners, a former State Department and CIA official, Larry Johnson. Larry, thanks for joining us. Well, how do they get these people to talk? Obviously, what the information these prisoners have may be critical.
Well, there are some techniques you can use that aren't going to be considered torture, you know, such as a little bit of sleep deprivation. And they also use just old-fashioned bargaining and leverage. You try to you get them apart, and you try to make them think that some of their compatriots are giving up more information, cutting a better deal than them, and give them an opportunity to bargain.
And they're considered prisoners of war right now.
Right now.
So they're not subject to Miranda rights or anything like that.
Right. They're not subject to Miranda rights. And they're really not prisoners of war in the classic sense, because under the classic definition, you have to be wearing recognized uniforms, a clear chain of command. These were not a regular army. So we may be going the extra step to treat them under those conventions, but they were not operating under those conventions.
If some of them do have information that could be what they call a ticking bomb, that they know of a terrorist operation underway, a sleeper cell someplace around the world in the United States, is there some sort of pressure that could be used short of all-out torture that could get them perhaps to talk?
Yeah, I think there are methods that can be used. Let me put it this way. I've seen it used against myself and some of my colleagues in a training situation, and people were willing to talk in 48 hours. Nobody suffered long-lasting or even short-term psychological damage. So there are ways to interrogate to elicit that information. I think the key here is it's got to be FBI and the intelligence community working together. This information, if it stays compartmented as it has in the past in law enforcement investigations where folks on the intelligence side aren't aware, it could make it much more difficult to prevent, because this is not just an FBI effort. This has got to be a total effort of the Central Intelligence Agency, the Defense Intelligence Agency, Drug Enforcement Administration. Everyone has to work together.
I know you testified before the Senate today on the search for Osama bin Laden. I want you to listen to what the Deputy Secretary of Defense, Paul Wolfowitz, said earlier today. Listen to this.
Any country in the world that would knowingly harbor bin Laden would be out of their minds. And I think they've seen what happened to the Taliban, and I think that's probably a pretty good lesson to people not to do that.
What do you think about that?
Amen, Paul. He's got it exactly right. I think what we've seen is this demonstration of force has sent a very powerful message throughout the Middle East. And they understand that the United States is not just talking tough. We're not posturing. We're willing to back up our words. And I think if bin Laden has escaped from Afghanistan or somewhere else, he will be hunted down. That's what's underway right now is just a very patient search. We're going to look in the caves. We're going to look under the rubble, and we'll look outside. There's money on the table to go get him. And he'll ultimately be found and be brought to justice.
And why is there increasing speculation right now? You think that he may have been killed in one of those massive bombing raids. Is it because, as some intelligence sources have said to me, when he travels with a relatively large entourage that would leave a footprint that U.S. and friendly intelligence services would hear about?
Now, he's not the kind of guy that likes to just travel with one or two and show up in a mystery. You know, he's not the Howard Hughes, if you will, of radical Islam. This guy has a retinue about him, and while he revels in being the regular guy, he still likes to have the trappings of power with him. So I think the possibility that he may be dead can't be ruled out.
And very briefly, the notion that he may have shaved off his beard, cut his hair, put on civilian clothes, flown out on a private jet someplace.
Well, we found how committed, if that is true, it's going to completely explode the myth that this guy was some committed Muslim fighter. This was just about him and murder.
Larry Johnson, thank you very much
Thanks,
for joining us. Appreciate it very much. And the Defense Secretary Donald Rumsfeld said today that despite the drop in fighting, the task in Afghanistan is far from over. He referred to what's ahead as tough, dirty, hard work. CNN's national correspondent Bob Franken is standing by over at the Pentagon. He has more on all of this. Bob?
Well, the United States now faces the prospect in Afghanistan of searching some of those very treacherous caves, dealing with a country that is so saturated with landmines, and of course having to look around every corner for some disaffected Taliban fighter who blended into the hills and wants to make a career now out of killing the enemy. And the enemy, of course, would be the United States. And so that kind of scenario prompted the Defense Secretary, who is meeting with other defense ministers, of course, in Brussels, to talk about a job that is anything but done.
We have reduced the number of areas within Afghanistan where they're likely to be. Those areas are being attacked from the ground by Afghan forces with the support of coalition forces. They are being attacked from the air, and additional prisoners have been taken today. Additional ground has been covered, and progress continues to be made, but the task is still ahead of us, and it should not be considered that it will be accomplished in a short period of time. It's going to be tough, dirty, hard work.
And it's going to be methodical work. In the Tora Bora area, they're starting to get, they being the United States troops, are starting to get from the Allies some of the prisoners who have been taken in the fighting. Some of the more important ones, at least the United States believes they're important, are now being moved away. Some Al-Qaeda, 15 of them, have been taken to the new detention facility to the south near Kandahar Airport. 5 others are now on the Peleliu, which is the U.S. assault ship offshore. Those, of course, include John Walker, the expatriate American, who is also in custody there. And the effort to interrogate Wolf goes on in earnest, so much so that the FBI has sent over agents for expertise in interrogation, and also, of course, to see if there is any information they have which might coordinate with those who have been captured. Wolf?
Bob Franken at the Pentagon, thank you very much. And I'll have much more assessment on the war in Afghanistan, including a live report from Kabul at 7 p.m. Eastern in the CNN War Room. And among my guests, the Senate Intelligence Committee member, Senator John Edwards of North Carolina. Please join me then. And by the way, you can participate by simply going to my website, cnn.com/wolf. Click on Send Questions. I'll try to get to as many of those questions as possible for our panel. That's also, by the way, that website where you can read my daily online column. And as we mentioned, federal doctors could start administering anthrax vaccine to some 75, perhaps many more Capitol Hill staffers and perhaps even thousands of police officers as early as tomorrow. Joining us now for some perspective on this story is Dr. Michael Osterholm. He's the director of the Center for Infectious Disease Research at the University of Minnesota. He's also an author of Living Terrors, a review of the state of America's preparedness for a bioterrorism attack. Dr. Osterholm, thank you very much for joining us. And let's get right to the story of the moment right now, this decision to make available this anthrax vaccine to thousands of postal workers, Capitol Hill staffers, police officers, if they want it, or to continue taking antibiotics perhaps for another 30 days beyond the 60-day regimen. What's your take on that?
Well, I think part of what we're experiencing here is really a recognition that we don't know as much about anthrax as we wish we did. As you know, until this recent outbreak, we hadn't had any cases of inhalational anthrax in this country dating back to the early 1970s, and even then only a very few this entire century. And so what we're really doing is formulating good science policy kind of on the run. And I think that what the recommendations here for either extending the time period in which people are on antibiotics or giving them the vaccine is a very good idea, and really represents the best effort to make sure no one comes down with anthrax as a result of exposures that occurred some 60 days ago.
As you know, that vaccine is a controversial vaccine. Some members of the U.S. military who have taken it believe that was probably the cause, at least they claim, it was the cause of Gulf War syndrome and some other diseases. How risky is taking that vaccine?
Well, first of all, we really have to go back and look at those data from the Gulf War, and none of us will tell you that people didn't have local reactions. They did, meaning the kinds of sore arms and so forth that occur with any number of different immunizations. But I think the important point here, Wolf, is that there have been several studies that have looked carefully at the vaccine and other kinds of serious illnesses affecting your muscles or organs and so forth. And in any of those studies, they did not find an increased occurrence of any of those conditions among the vaccinees, meaning that any one given day, anyone on the streets of America could come down with some serious illness, but does it occur more frequently in people who are vaccinated? So I can just tell you from a bottom line personal experience myself, if I had access to this vaccine right now and I had been one of those individuals exposed, I'd definitely want it.
Are you suggesting, Dr. Osterholm, that if you've taken the 60-day regimen of the ciprofloxacin, the Cipro or penicillin, some other antibiotic, that may not have killed all those spores that perhaps arrived in someone's lungs?
Exactly. What we really know, and this is largely based on animal studies looking at intentional infections in monkeys, for example, is that when one inhales these spores, they're like kernels of corn. They're very hardy entities. Once they get into the lungs, they get moved by cells into the lymph nodes and the chest, and they sit there. And then one day they may pop like popcorn, and suddenly now you have the live bacteria that gets into the bloodstream and causes a serious illness. In those monkey studies, animals got sick sometimes as late as up to 60 days or more after they actually had the bacteria and the spores inhaled in. And so what we're really doing here is saying that given those kinds of data, clearly it's not human data, but it's the best data we have, says, yeah, that maybe somebody could actually get sick up to 60 to 90 days afterwards, and therefore let's absolutely be as safe as we can be and make sure that should those spores germinate or start to grow, that you have the protection of the antibiotics or the vaccine.
Been taking it for 60 days. You're a Capitol Hill employee, or you're a police officer who worked at the one of the buildings up there, the Hart Senate office building, a postal worker, and you get this statement today from the Department of Health and Human Services, which says this: the decision to use this vaccine is at the discretion of the individual in consultation with his or her physician. They probably want better guidance than that. Is that the best that the federal public health authorities can do, and just say consult your doctor and see if you want to get the vaccine or get some more Cipro?
You know, again, Wolf, I think that we would like to have more data. We want to know, does this really work or not work? What is the risk? And I think that the federal officials are giving the community the very best information they have. Had they come out and said everybody must take this vaccine, you would have heard a number of people crying out that somehow they're being experimented upon. If you had not offered it at all, people would have said there's a life-saving potential modality here that's not being offered to individuals. Why not? And so I think that this is not an attempt to take the middle ground. It's just telling the truth. It's saying these are the best data we have on the science, and therefore we would make this available to you, but in the end it's got to be an individual decision. I think I've made it clear tonight, if I had access to this vaccine, I had been exposed, I definitely would take the vaccine.
There was some question, Dr. Ostrom, about if there's enough vaccine available. As you know, there's been some problems in manufacturing it over in Ann Arbor, where the only place where it is put together. Is there enough vaccine available?
At this point, there's enough vaccine to cover this particular situation, and I think it's also important to note that the problems that occurred in making this vaccine were not around its safety, it's around its potency, meaning how powerful was it or not, how to stabilize that, and we want to make sure that the people out there don't think that somehow they're getting an unsafe vaccine, but at this point we have enough vaccine, and I think the people should seriously consider looking at that potential.
Good advice from Dr. Michael Osterholm, who probably knows more about infectious diseases than almost anyone I know. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you very much, Wolf.
Appreciate it. And preliminary tests on an unidentified white powder delivered yesterday to a top State Department official suggest that powder does not appear to be anthrax. The envelope was opened in the offices of the Deputy Secretary of State, Richard Armitage. There was no letter inside, just the as yet unidentified white powder. Officials tell CNN they're increasingly convinced the letter was a hoax, but just in case, the air system in Armitage's office was shut down and FBI agents were called in to investigate. President Bush has a wish this week, but getting Congress to help him out has not been easy. When we return, a debate on getting rid of recession. 2 U.S. senators give their opinions, and they don't agree. Later, a stunning setback for a New York City landmark, made even worse by the timing.
for you. On my way to better things. Got no time. No time.
Why do 63% of Americans think financial institutions aren't interested in helping them? Maybe because they aren't. With H&R Block Financial Advisors, now everyone can have access to smart financial advice. You get investments, financial services, and retirement planning, all on your terms.
Time to relax. What a time for bad heartburn. Try Extra Strength Mylanta. It works on tough nighttime heartburn fast. So go ahead, relax, if you can. Extra Strength Mylanta.
To a perfect evening.
Was it a snake? No, the champagne's not Corbel.
Corbel, for people who know champagne.
CNN thanks you for making us America's most watched cable news network. This year and every year, you can depend on CNN.
The nation's oldest and best home wagering system, Philadelphia Park PhoneBet, is excited to introduce PhoneBet.com. PhoneBet.com is the easiest, fastest, most action-packed way to wager on horse racing from all over the country. And best of all, the service is absolutely free with no access charges or daily fees. For a limited time, Pennsylvania residents will be awarded 2,500 bonus points in the Philadelphia Park Player Rewards program for the first time they wager using PhoneBet.com. PhoneBet.com, the future of wagering today.
You want it.
Information technology.
You need it.
Information technology.
Nationwide, there's an ongoing demand for it.
Information technology.
The Satone Institute has it. Call 1-866-634-7331 now. I did, and now I'm a web programmer.
I did it.
I'm in demand. I'm a web programmer.
Thanks, Satone.
Satone does it right. Call 1-866-634-7331 now for your free brochure.
Season's greetings from CNN.
Welcome back to Search for Osama bin Laden continues. Our senior White House correspondent John King standing by over at the White House. This subject came up during a meeting that the president had with some congressional leaders earlier today. John, tell us what you've learned.
We are told, Wolf, that the president told congressional leaders much of what we are hearing from officials speaking publicly at the podiums, that the United States has no definitive information as to the whereabouts of Osama bin Laden. One other potentially interesting footnote from that meeting, we are told the president and his national security advisor also told the congressional leadership that as U.S. military forces go through al-Qaeda and Taliban installations in Afghanistan, they are scooping up anything, documents, records, anything that might be significant from an intelligence standpoint or an investigative standpoint, and they were told today, the leaders of Congress were told, that additional videotapes, plural, no number put on it, but additional videotapes have been seized by the U.S. military and are now being brought back to be analyzed by investigative and intelligence agencies. No one could say at this meeting whether they would be as significant as the bin Laden videotape we saw released recently, simply because those tapes are not back yet, not back in the hands of the intelligence agencies, but the president did say among the evidence being gathered are additional videotapes.
All right, maybe they'll be releasing more of those videotapes as well. John, the main thrust of that meeting was what the president hopes to accomplish this week, some sort of deal between the Democrats and the Republicans in the Senate on how to stimulate the economy, get over the recession. Does it look like he's going to get that deal?
White House says 50-50 odds right now. Obviously, the next 24 hours are critical because Congress wants to go home for a holiday recess. The key sticking point right now, there are still some disagreements over tax policy, but the major disagreement is how the government should deliver health care benefits, extended health care benefits to workers thrown out of work either by the September 11th attacks or the overall recession dating back to March. Democrats want to do that through existing government programs, employer-based programs. If you've been laid off, you might be familiar with a program called COBRA. Republicans say give a tax tax credit to individuals, let them go out and buy their own health care. That is the major sticking point right now. If that can be brokered, and it is a big if, negotiations ongoing as we speak, everyone believes the rest of it can be worked out. But the president will go to Capitol Hill tomorrow, meet with House Republicans. His negotiators are up on Capitol Hill right now. Still a big question mark as to whether this administration can broker an agreement. There are negotiations in the House, but the main sticking point is an administration fight with Senate Democratic leader, the majority leader, Tom Daschle.
Okay, John King at the White House, thank you very much. And for more on what can be done to revive the economy, we're joined by two members of the U.S. Senate. John Rockefeller of West Virginia, he's a member of the Finance Committee. He's been taking part in all these negotiations on the economic stimulus bill. And Senator Phil Gramm of Texas, he sits both on both the Budget and Finance Committees. Senators, thanks so much for joining us. Senator Rockefeller, let me begin with you. The president wants a deal. He's a very popular president right now. Can he achieve it? Can he get what he wants? Or are you going to stand in his way?
The only way this is going to be settled is for the President and for Speaker Hastert and Leader Tom Daschle to sit down and work it out. I've been working on this for 2 weeks, more or less nonstop. It's reached a stalemate. Republicans have a totally different view of how you do health care. They want to put the individual, as your guy just said, against the insurance market all by himself or herself. That's a loser for the individual. We disagree on a lot of things, but the President and the Speaker and the majority leader can work it out if they sit down together. Otherwise, it won't work.
Senator Gramm, you've walked down this path many times over the years. The president sometimes has to come in and reach a deal. Can he satisfy the Democrats on this issue that Senator Rockefeller just talked about, the insurance for unemployed individuals?
Well, Wolf, I don't know. I think there are several issues here. I think one issue that the president has been adamant on is that working people ought to get tax relief to provide incentives for them to consume, to work, to save, and to invest. The proposal that he's made is that for that tax bracket that you get into as an individual above $28,000 a year, and as a couple around $46,000 a year, the so-called 28% bracket, that the president wants to lower that rate to 25%. I don't understand why Democrats have decided that they want to portray somebody making $28,000 a year as rich and therefore oppose this provision. So I think it's essential. In terms of health care, I think the question is, how can we have a program to help people that are unemployed that can be up and running immediately and that is only going to last for a year or 18 months or at most 24 months? If you set up a brand new entitlement program, the year is over before it goes into effect, and it seems to me that what the Democrats really want here is a massive new entitlement that would ultimately be paid for with payroll tax, and I think that's an economic depressant.
Senator Rockefeller, it's the old debate. The Democrats supposedly just want more federal spending, more government spending. The Republicans want to cut taxes. Is that what it all boils down to?
That's partly what it is.
You're standing in the way of a tax cut?
No, it's partly the fact that the Republicans, and I've been in the negotiations, Phil Gramm hasn't, the Republicans have been basically saying we want to cut taxes on corporations, so they want to give IBM $1.4 billion on something called the alternative minimum tax, which I don't need to explain at the moment, and IBM isn't selling computers. So what does that have to do with stimulus?
But I thought the president had, when Mitch Daniels was on my program Sunday, the budget director, he said that the White House was not supporting what the House Republicans wanted, the retroactive tax rebate for the corporations on that alternative minimum tax.
Well, that could be. That could be. If it's changed within the last 24 hours. But we're facing the president trying to raise the national debt ceiling, the director of the budget saying we're in deficit. What we want to do is to deliver health insurance to people right away. We don't want to do it through the individual tax credit because history and time have proven that it doesn't work. The insurance company beat the people, the little people, the poor people every single time. And we want to do it on a program which is already in place called COBRA. The Republicans don't want to make any trades or any kind of adjustments because they are focused on rate relief and on alternative minimum tax reform. And we did that to the form of almost $2 trillion last summer.
Let me bring back Senator Gramm. What about that specific issue of the big tax breaks for the huge corporations that Senator Gramm is talking about? That's a major issue as far as the Democrats are concerned. Are you ready to walk away from the retroactive nature of it?
Well, the Senate Republicans never proposed a retroactive provision. The president has made it clear now for 3 weeks that he did not support the retroactive provision. I think it's clear the House passed a bill to get into a negotiating position, but I really think it comes down to a difference in philosophy. It's like on a cold winter night, the roof blows off. The Democrats want to provide penicillin and blankets. We want to rebuild the roof. They say, well, somebody might make money rebuilding the roof. Might be a rich person building the roof. We don't think it matters. We think we need to get the roof back on the house. But the bottom line is they believe in more spending. We believe you provide incentives for people to work, save, and invest by letting them keep more, and it's a fundamental difference, no doubt about it.
What about that, Senator Rockefeller?
Well, it brings out the exact difference between, frankly, the two parties, although this is, I think, is more ideological than political. The Republicans fundamentally want to take care of corporations and wealthy people simply as they did last summer and bankrupted the country in the process. We want to follow our principles, which we thought we'd all agreed on, and which I think the president might agree on, and that is do stimulus now to improve the economy, make it better, get money into people's hands, make sure that they have good health insurance and good unemployment insurance benefits, and incidentally Medicaid for all those states which now have about a $50 billion debt. And the Republicans are fundamentally blocking that. All I can say is that the president may think what he thinks and may have the right ideas, but the negotiators, that is Bill Thomas, has a totally different idea, and he wants AMT and the tax reductions for wealthy individuals. And I don't know how to get around that, Wolf.
What about that, Senator Graham? It sounds to me like there's not going to be a deal despite the popularity of the president, despite his personal involvement, given this fundamental philosophical difference that Senator Rockefeller is talking about. There may not be an economic stimulus package in place before the Christmas recess.
Well, Wolf, I think the American people will be disappointed if there's not a stimulus package. I think the president started out with a compromise. But as long as I've been in Congress, I still cannot understand why Democrats have got to try to divide America into rich and poor, and how somebody making $28,000 a year is rich. They're fighting giving tax relief to someone making $28,000 a year, claiming that those people are millionaires. It just doesn't make any sense. The point is, we want the economy to get stronger. We want people to invest more. And the people that have got money, we want to encourage them to invest it. And if America's going to be saved, it's going to be saved at a profit. That doesn't offend me, but we've got some Democrats that would prefer that America not be saved if somebody is going to earn a nickel in the process. And I just think it's narrow-minded.
We got to leave it right there, but if both of you can give me a quick yes or no answer, I'd be grateful. First to you, Senator Rockefeller. Will there be an economic stimulus package this week?
If the president gets himself involved and participates with the speaker and the leader, there can be.
Senator Graham?
If I had to bet money, I think the White House assessment of 50-50 is pretty good, but I think it's still slightly better than 50-50.
All right, let's see. Thanks for joining us. Appreciate it. Two knowledgeable members of the U.S. Senate discussing an issue obviously very close to both of their hearts. Thanks, Senator Graham and Senator Rockefeller. And how to revive the economy is our question of the day at our website at cnn.com/Wolf. We asked what you think is the best medicine for the economy, tax cuts or spending for the unemployed. So far, tax cuts have been the overwhelming favorite in our non-scientific poll. Favorite, look at this, 75% of our respondents, they like the tax cuts. And is Iraq the next target in the international war against terrorism? I'll speak with an expert who believes now is the perfect time for the United States to attack. And more chaos today following another airport shutdown. How a small discovery turned into a very large mess.
When my son comes to visit, I like to prepare nice things for him. Hi, baby. Peach pie, my special meatloaf, and a nice bunch of mid-caps, small caps, and laddered munis, taking into account current opportunities in the Asian market.
No utilities?
Wouldn't it be great if the person you trust most was your broker?
Made a return.
At a Schwab planning workshop, we give advice that's objective, uncomplicated, and not driven by commission.
If you're concerned about estate taxes...
To sign up for a workshop, call 1-800-9-SCHWAB.
$34? $51? $45 last month for long distance? How much are you paying? You need Sprint 500 anytime. 500 state-to-state minutes to use any day, anytime for $25 a month. $25 a month is going to help a lot of people. Sprint 500 anytime. The smarter way to cut your long distance bill. Sign up now. Call 1-800-PIN-DROP.
As winds of change blow across today's economic landscape, innovative thinkers are capturing these forces to build a stronger tomorrow. From CNN and Time, and sponsored by IBM, who are the 25 most influential business people in the world? How is their vision helping to keep our future bright? Visit CNN.com/influentials and watch CNN at 11 a.m. and 8 p.m. all this week for the special series sponsored by IBM.
Tonight, a rare sit-down interview with First Lady Laura Bush, plus the tour the public can't take this year of her White House holiday decorations. Christmas at the White House on Larry King Live at 9. Then, CNN and MTV come together to connect you to the kids of Afghanistan. What is their take on America's youth? Find out on a special news night with Aaron Brown. That's all tonight, beginning at 9 Eastern. You can depend on CNN.
Welcome back. Let's get a quick check of all the latest developments. Thousands of Capitol Hill staffers and Capitol Hill police and U.S. postal workers will have the option of receiving the anthrax vaccine. That decision announced within the past hour by the Department of Health and Human Services. Those being offered vaccine are among the people most at risk. They include those closest to the letter containing anthrax that was opened in the office of the Senate Majority Leader Tom Daschle. All have received antibiotics already. At a NATO meeting in Brussels, the Defense Secretary Donald Rumsfeld warned today that September 11th may have been but a dim preview of terror attacks yet to come. Although fighting is done in Afghanistan, Rumsfeld said the mission there is far from over. And more than a dozen enemy prisoners arrived today at the U.S. encampment in Kandahar. Also arriving in Kandahar, a team of FBI interrogators. One told reporters their primary mission is to gather information that could prevent terror attacks in the future. Still no word on the whereabouts of Osama bin Laden. Sirens once again echo through the streets of New York City as a Gothic cathedral goes up in flames. We'll hear about the damage. And as winter approaches, is a cure for the common cold in the future? How a new medication might help.
Tens of thousands of people continue to purchase new Oldsmobiles. Is it because of our special interest-free financing? Or our 5-year, 60,000-mile GM protection plan? Or did they simply take a test drive? Are you in the market? Get in an Oldsmobile and keep America rolling. Oldsmobile, backed by GM.
What does it take to be an e-business survivor? You've mapped out a plan, and you signed on with an experienced and loyal guide. Or did you? This is your e-solution, a problem-solving, systems-integrating business animal. Find out how outsourcing with Sprint e-solutions helps you avoid the pitfalls of going it alone. Get this free portfolio, Business Survival 2002. Call 1-866-604-5421 today. You'll learn the 7 steps successful businesses are taking now to grow next year, including how to protect your website with a guarantee of 100% availability. And you'll learn about proven tools that tell you exactly where your business is going. Call now and you'll even get these exclusive white papers on best practices in business today. You'll see how we deploy our own solutions or bring in new ideas from a leading edge partner and help you stay above it all. For your free portfolio, including white papers, call 1-866-604-5421 today. You'll see, there's no comparison whatsoever.
Today, information means everything. And only Time magazine brings you into the heart of what matters most. The people who change our world. The events that transform our lives. Diverse perspectives that turn information into insight. It's all inside Time. And now, with your paid subscription, you can keep your own information close at hand. This Ultronic handheld organizer and carrying case are yours free when you order 56 issues of Time for the incredible price of 99 cents an issue. Call now with your credit card and receive this handsome Liberty watch as a special gift, absolutely free. You don't just read Time, you experience it. Learning more, understanding more. Use your credit card now and get over 70% off the newsstand price, the free Ultronic handheld organizer, carrying case, and the Time Liberty watch. Time magazine, keeping you better informed. Call now and subscribe.
At Bank of America, we really wanted to participate in the Olympic Winter Games. But in the end, we decided to support the real athletes and stick to the things we do best, like eliminating 80% of all upfront paperwork to make the mortgage process less painful.
Looking at other stories now on our Newswire, truck painter Gary Leon Ridgway pleaded innocent today to 4 of the so-called Green River serial killings. Ridgway is being held without bail pending a hearing next month. At least 49 women are believed to have been victims of the Green River killer since 1982. Hours after it was shut down, the airport in Charlotte, North Carolina is open, but still a mess. Thousands of passengers had to be re-screened and dozens of flights remain on the ground. The shutdown was ordered after a screening device was found, get this, unplugged. It's months away from being on drugstore shelves, but it could help you fight the sniffles. Scientists have created a drug that treats the common cold. Researchers say it won't make your symptoms disappear overnight, but it is proven to help you get better more quickly. Last week, the House, today the Senate gave schools greater leeway when it comes to spending government money. In return, schools will have to give more standardized tests and create tougher standards for school performance. President Bush promises to sign the education bill into law. In New York, a landmark cathedral goes up in flames. We'll have a full damage report in just a minute. Stay with us.
Oh, the Millers have a new Lexus.
Not the Millers. You.
The Lexus December to Remember sales event.
It's beautiful.
Dad, you gotta see this.
You'll find special values whether you buy or lease.
Well, we got you a new CD player.
The December to Remember sales event. Missing it would definitely spoil the surprise.
I cannot believe this.
See your Lexus dealer.
A respected newsman with a different way of looking at the story. Join Aaron Brown for Newsnight every weeknight at 10 Eastern. You can depend on CNN.
Trans-Siberian Orchestra, Christmas Eve and Other Stories. The symphonic rock holiday classic. Plus, The Christmas Attic. Now available, The Ghosts of Christmas Eve, featuring music by Trans-Siberian Orchestra on DVD and VHS.
Liberty Lumber for all your do-it-yourself needs. Supplies for every project. Lumber, drywall, metal studs, all types of moldings. Liberty's craftsmen custom design doors, windows, steps for that finished look. Liberty says do-it-yourself doesn't mean doing it all yourself, so we have free delivery and carry the materials into your house. You spend your time on the project itself. Liberty Lumber, a family-run business who cares about you. 1116 South 7th in South Philly. 215-468-3703.
The number for lumber.
Athletes are pretty well known for their superstitions, but I gotta be honest, our guys can be pretty quirky too.
Have a good show, Kenny.
You too. There's this one time Brian had a great show, didn't bathe for 17 days straight.
This year, though, it's been a very different story.
The worst had to be when Dan spilled clam chowder, Manhattan clam chowder, all over Reese. Had his best show ever. course, that got old for Reese really quickly.
Yeah.
He's in makeup.
Okay.
In practice, we go over things over and over again. We're a firm believer that the more times you do it, the better you're going to be. This is a game of reaction. We don't have time to think out there. So we're trying to do as many of the basics as we possibly can in practice every day so that our players are reacting and not standing around and thinking what I'm supposed to be doing out here. You cannot play one way and expect to win. So we have to make adjustments in the game. Obviously, practice is very important.
Making us America's most watched cable news network.
After weeks at working at Ground Zero, New York's finest and bravest will soon meet America's finest and bravest. 6 New York City firefighters and police officers are on their way to Afghanistan. The men want to say thanks to the troops fighting the war against terrorism.
I'm going with the memory of my brother Tim, Lieutenant Timmy Higgins from Squad 252. I'm bringing over some special bracelets in his honor. We have patches from various firehouses, my own, others, mass cards, all types of good things. We even have some of the concrete from the World Trade Center. We even have a piece of the plane. We want these troops to know that we're bonded together here and that we love them.
Besides meeting with troops, the men will deliver food and supplies to needy victims of the war. Part of a religious and cultural landmark in New York City went up in flames today, just a week before Christmas. As CNN's Deborah Farrick reports, New Yorkers are left to cope with yet another blow to their city.
Flames engulfed a side of the world's largest Gothic cathedral, St. John the Divine. A fire igniting early morning in a gift shop, threatening to spread to the main sanctuary and consume priceless artifacts.
I just think that it's a tragedy that the city has suffered more trouble.
The sounds of sirens echoed loudly once again in a city still reeling from attacks on the World Trade Center and the crash of American Airlines Flight 587. But this time, there were no casualties, as 200 firefighters brought the flames under control within 3 hours, helped by a relatively new kind of camera that guides them through blinding smoke to the heat source.
There was such a heavy smoke condition inside, the firefighters couldn't see anything. So they would have been just shooting water into an area they thought there was fire. The thermal imaging cameras allowed them to zero in on it exactly where it was.
With so much smoke and water, church officials feared that some damage might be irreparable. 2 priceless 18th century tapestries were nearly destroyed.
There's some left of each of those 2 tapestries. It's unclear at this point whether or not they can be restored.
St. John the Divine has been under construction since groundbreaking in 1892. It's a cultural magnet for New Yorkers, one of the city's preeminent concert stages with a school, arts and community programs, and some homeless people who have trained here as stonemasons to help build the historic landmark. Every year, more than 500,000 people visit St. John's, with Christmas a very busy time.
There will be slight disruptions, but I don't think it will cause us to cancel our services. The services of the cathedral, where thousands of people from all over the world will be converging on the cathedral, will go on.
The main part of the cathedral remains virtually unscathed. One lieutenant said it was critical to put this fire out quickly. If not, he says, it is the kind of fire that could have burned possibly for weeks. Deborah Farrick, CNN, New York.
A surprise decision today in the case of Mumia Abu Jamal, who was convicted of the 1981 killing of a Philadelphia police officer. A federal judge overturned Abu Jamal's death sentence, but rejected his request for a new trial and upheld his 1982 conviction on first-degree murder charges. The judge said a state court judge in 1981 had inappropriately instructed the jury on how to determine if Abu Jamal should get the death penalty. The ruling was slammed by Philadelphia's DA.
235 pages of Judge Yohn's opinion states that all of the phony claims and all the faddist claims and all the propaganda about the procedures of the trial, his lawyer or anything else, has been totally and completely rejected by the court. Our position is that the judge's decision was incorrect on the law, and that we have an absolute right to take an appeal. And after 20 years, I don't think any of you would expect any less.
The case of Abu Jamal, a former Black Panther and radio reporter, has sparked years of protests from opponents of capital punishment. And this note, The Point with Greta Van Susteren, will have an exclusive live interview with Maureen Faulkner. She's the widow of the Selene police officer Abu Jamal was convicted of killing. And attorney Johnny Cochran will also join in the conversation to discuss the details of the case. That's at 8:30 p.m. Eastern tonight, 5:30 on the West Coast, here on CNN. And when we come back, we'll make a dramatic turn. Sports fans, listen to this. Wait till you see the game that the U.S. Marines have introduced in Afghanistan. They've been introduced to a nice new game, not so nice sometimes. Monday Night Football might never seem as exciting. Watch this. Stay with us.
This is Silverado Heavy Duty. Available with the new Duramax diesel. The most powerful diesel you can get in a pickup. Silverado Heavy Duty. More truck from Chevy.
Wish your wife would wrap up the shopping. And you just wish you were out of here. Guys, I think I can help you out. At $8.99, a Dimension desktop with an Intel Pentium 4 processor is the perfect gift for anyone. Call or go online today and get a free CD burner or an all-in-one print center.
Dude, I'm getting a Dell.
Honey? Holiday values made easy. Easy as Dell.
At 1-800-Flowers.com, nothing makes us feel better than helping you to express yourself with warm holiday gifts like a beautiful bouquet, a candy cane covered tree or wreath of fragrant balsam, a Lennox snowman cookie jar, an eye-catching centerpiece, and fun for the child in all of us. There are gifts that'll keep coming all year long, and treats so delicious, they'll be gone before you know it. Call, click, or come into 1-800-Flowers.com today. And thanks for letting us be a part of your holiday.
New America Online version 7.0 is here.
There's never been a better time to join.
What are you waiting for? Call 1-877-265-0100 now for AOL's best offer ever.
7.0 is filled with a whole bunch of new stuff.
No one has what AOL has.
Call now and do things with new AOL 7.0 you could never do before.
There's even more local information. News, weather, sports.
Radio without any static right on my computer. 7.0 makes shopping easier.
AOL is super fast.
Call now and see how new AOL version 7.0 can keep you in touch with friends and family.
I can be talking to a few people at the same time.
All of a sudden, bing, you got your instant messages.
You've got mail. It's fun getting email.
You've got mail.
Hers should say you've got lots of mail.
Call now and see how easy it is to get started. Sign up over the phone and be online in minutes.
7.0 makes it even easier.
Call 1-877-265-0100 now to join AOL and get a risk-free special offer for new members. It's our best offer ever.
AOL is wonderful.
America Online, so easy to use, no wonder it's #1.
I'd like to take a look at my investments.
Can Fidelity help me with some planning? Go through what I'm invested in, goals and so forth?
Of course. You know, now might be a good time to look at your entire portfolio.
Yeah? You can help?
Well, certainly. With Fidelity Portfolio Review, we can help you draw a complete picture.
Really?
Sure. Fidelity and non-Fidelity accounts, IRAs, 401ks, stocks, mutual funds, even the effects of taxes.
How do we start?
We'll meet in person or over the phone.
That's great. Let's get rolling.
For a free review of your portfolio, call 1-800-FIDELITY.
Lou Dobbs is standing by to tell us what he has on Lou Dobbs' Money Line, which begins at the top of the hour. Lou?
Well, thank you very much. Coming up on the top of the hour, a cave-by-cave search for Osama bin Laden is underway tonight. We'll have a special report for you on something called cave snoopers, the latest in how this important technology is being used to find, hopefully, Osama bin Laden and to carry out the campaign against terrorism in Afghanistan. Tonight we'll be joined by CNN terrorism expert Peter Bergen. We'll be discussing where that search for Osama bin Laden will likely lead. And to discuss the situation in the Middle East and the war against terrorism, former Defense Secretary, Moneyline regular contributor William Cohen will also join us. And we'll be taking you to malls all around the country for a look at how retail sales are doing this holiday season. Live reports from all around the country on what shoppers are buying and what they're spending. All of that and a lot more coming up at the top of the hour. Please join us. Now back to Wolf Blitzer in Washington. Wolf?
Thank you very much, Lou. We certainly will. Meanwhile, although anti-Taliban forces have made major gains in Afghanistan, the United States says the war on terrorism is far from over. If so, which country may be next? One strategist is speculating Iraq is atop the list. He's Elliot Cohn from the Johns Hopkins University School of Advanced International Studies here in Washington, D.C. He joins me now live. Thank you very much, Elliot, for joining us. So why do you think the timing may be right to go after Iraq right now?
Well, I think the administration has established the principle that the key issue is states that sponsor terrorism. Now, Al-Qaeda is a problem on its own. We're going to be chasing them around the world for quite some time to come. They couldn't have been what they were if they didn't have state support. And state sponsorship of terrorism is really the big issue.
Does the administration, though, in order to keep this coalition together, need some smoking gun linking Saddam Hussein, Iraq, to the September 11th terrorist attacks?
Our issues with Saddam go, of course, way beyond September 11th. There may or may not be a smoking gun, but there are some things we do know about Saddam. We do know that he's developing weapons of mass destruction, that he's persisting in trying to do that. We do know that he tried to kill the first President Bush. He may very well have had a hand in the first attempt on the World Trade Center. There's pretty good evidence of that. He's committed mass murder. This is a very bad actor. We already know that. As for the coalition, the truth of the matter is we don't need that many countries to go after Saddam. Really, you need Kuwait and Turkey. The big issue is Saudi Arabia, and there I think part of the issue is going to be what sort of approach we take to the Saudis. Until now, we've been extremely deferential to them, which is rather odd when you consider the fact that we're protecting them.
But for the U.S. to launch strikes against Iraq, that's quite a different category than to go after Taliban forces in Afghanistan. The Iraqis, despite the Gulf War, still have a rather formidable military force.
It's really not very formidable at all. It's about a third the size of what it was in the Gulf. More importantly, they've replaced none of their major equipment. By all accounts, it's about 50% unready. The troops are demoralized. Meanwhile, the United States has been progressing enormously since the Gulf War. You should never predict that anything's going to be a walkover, but the truth of the matter is this is an extremely frail military. They've been up against us once. They have no desire to come at us again. If the administration decides it's time to take on Saddam's regime, it's just a question of whether we decide we want to do it or not.
And briefly, do you think the administration has made any such decision?
I think they're edging towards it. I think there's probably a disagreement about how quickly you do it and what kind of excuses or pretexts or development you need. But I think there is a general feeling out there that the world would be a lot better off without Saddam Hussein.
Elliot Cohn from the School of Advanced International Studies, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And strong symbolism today at the Kandahar airport, where U.S. Marines raised a special American flag. The pool correspondent for the television networks, David Wright, reports from southern Afghanistan.
For the Marine Corps, the flag is an icon of freedom and of sacrifices made in the name of honor. This flag has special significance. It was found in the rubble of Ground Zero and is dedicated to civilians, the first casualties in this war. It was inscribed at Ground Zero by family members of the victims, by firefighters, FBI agents, and police officers, and by New Yorkers brought together by a tragedy. The stars carry the names of police officers who lost their lives September 11th, as well as sailors who died on the USS Cole. The flag belongs to the New York Police Department's Emergency Services Unit, many of whose members are former Marines. They felt it important that the flag come to Afghanistan as a powerful reminder to these Marines of what they're fighting for. This morning, in the courtyard of Kandahar Airport, the 3 Marines charged with raising the flag stood stock still for a good 15 minutes as the men gathered to reflect on its significance.
To have this one signed by families of victims, police officers from New York City, have flown in New York City, be able to bring it out here, take this airfield, and raise that flag, that means a lot to all the Marines and sailors that are here, and all the armed forces, I'm sure.
The assembly saluted as the stars and stripes climbed slowly up the flagpole. It hung there for a moment, tentative and quiet, before it found a gust of wind and unfurled in the morning sun. David Wright with the U.S. Marines in Kandahar.
And in Mazar-e-Sharif in northern Afghanistan, U.S. Marines joined some Afghan soldiers today to play a very different version of, get this, polo. It's called buzashki. The game begins with a decapitated calf. Look at this, placed in a chalk circle. Riders battle to grab hold of the calf. Winners receive wristwatches and some American cash. Let's watch it for a little bit. What a game. I'll be back in 1 hour with more coverage here in the CNN War Room. Until then, thanks very much for watching. I'm Wolf Blitzer in Washington. CNN's coverage of America's new war continues with Lou Dobbs' Money Line. That begins right now.